In our previous lesson, we talked about intentional torts against people. In this lesson, we're going to still be looking at intentional torts, but instead of the torts being committed against people, now they're going to be committed against property. Okay, so these types of torts are actions that deliberately negatively affect property or the use of property. Okay, the most common ones that we're going to be looking at are trespassing, conversion, nuisance, and disparagement. Okay, so the tort of trespassing, this is something that most of us are probably very familiar with. Trespassing is interfering with or being on someone's property. If someone clearly has a no trespassing sign up on their property and you go ahead and put yourself on the property regardless of those signs, you would be considered trespassing. Trespassing is a tort against property. If the landowner wanted to prosecute you, they would have the right to do that. Okay, so that is trespassing. Next tort that we're going to look at is conversion. Conversion is interfering with a person's right to personal property. Basically, it's borrowing and not returning it. Okay, so what crime does this sound like? Well, it sounds a lot like larceny or theft, stealing. Okay, it is a little bit different though. So what I want you to do in order to get an understanding of what conversion is on the slides that I've uploaded to Canvas, I want you to go ahead and go to this YouTube link and watch the video, and it'll help explain how conversion is different than stealing. Okay. Right, now our third tort is nuisance. So nuisance is interfering with the enjoyment of property. Okay, so some examples up here. Loud music at night. Okay, that's going to be disturbing to your neighbors, right? Your neighbors have bought a home, they've bought property, they have the right to enjoy their property, you know, the peace and tranquility of it without their neighbors playing very loud music into the late hours of the night. Okay, so that would be an example of nuisance. Foul odors. If you had something in your yard that was it smelled very bad and it interfered with the enjoyment of your neighbor's property. They can't go out onto their back deck because there's something in your backyard that smells very bad. Okay, cars coming and going at all hours of the night. These are examples of how your actions interfere with the enjoyment of other people's property. Okay, so there's a bit of a fine line with this. Some people would argue, well, it's my right to do what I want on my own property, and that's true, but you need to be conscientious of the people that are around you and how your actions are ultimately impacting them as well. I would say ultimately try to be courteous, considerate of your neighbors. So taking this concept of nuisance and applying it to our own lives in Lower Paxton, residents have to adhere to a noise ordinance. So what this means is in Lower Paxton Township, you can only make noises of 60 decibels between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Okay? And then 55 decibels from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. Basically what it's saying is after 9 p.m. you got to keep the noise down lower than what you are allowed to do between the hours of 7 in the morning and 9 at night. Okay? So to give you a little bit of context for that, a somewhat busy street in Harrisburg reads about 80 decibels. Okay? So you can't be making extreme noises in your backyard after 9 o'clock at night in Lower Paxton Township. All right, now our last tort is disparagement, okay? Disparagement is when we lie about an object. A very clear example is somebody lies about the quality of a car you are trying to sell, okay? So if I'm trying to sell a car and somebody comes along and says that the car is a really bad car, but in fact it's a decent car, and that prevents me from selling the car, that person may have committed disparagement against me. They lied about the car that I'm trying to sell. Okay, it's a decent car, it's in decent shape, I'm making no false claims about it, but this person that I know comes along and they say that they tell the potential buyer they're lying about that car, the car is you know, a junker. Well, the person has committed disparagement. They lied about the object, and because of that, I couldn't sell the car. I lost money in this setup, okay? So I could sue the person that lied about my car for disparagement, okay? So what element of a tort would we need to prove to win a lawsuit in this example? Well, we would have to prove that actual damages occurred, okay? I would have to prove that I had to ultimately sell the car at a lower price had the lie not been committed. Maybe I had the car offered for $5,000, the person was ready to buy, but then they backed out because the other person lied about the car. And then I have to wait 2 months for another potential buyer to come along, and I can only sell the car for $4,000. Well, I sold the car for $1,000 less than I originally was going to sell it for, so I had damages of $1,000. Okay, that's what I would need to prove in a courtroom in order to successfully file a lawsuit. Okay, so this was a quick lesson. I just wanted to go over 4 of the torts that are intentional and they relate to property. So go ahead and make sure that you have a good understanding of the difference between conversion and theft by watching that YouTube video. And as always, if you have any questions about the content of this lesson, please feel free to reach out.